Hi, and welcome to Mother's Quest, a podcast for moms like me ready to live our own truly epic life. I'm Julie Neal, a life and leadership coach, community builder, writer, and mom to two high-energy boys who challenge me to grow into my best self. I'll be right there. Where was I? In the months leading up to a big milestone birthday, I decided it was time to stop sidelining my dreams and become the hero of my own journey. I knew I didn't want to do it alone, so I created this podcast to learn from other moms further ahead on their quest, so their words of wisdom and lessons learned could help light the way for mine. In truth, I created this podcast for myself, but I hope you'll come along with me and find some treasures of your own. Hello, and welcome to episode 15 of the Mother's Quest podcast. The extended season is moving right along, and I'm so excited to bring these conversations to you. If you haven't yet visited the website, I want to invite you to press pause in a moment and head over to mothersquest.com to explore some of the ways you can get more connected. At the site, you can sign up for our email list, have show notes delivered directly to your inbox, click the link to join the Facebook group, and press record to leave a message for me. I would love to hear which are your favorite moments from the podcast and how what you're hearing and learning is impacting your epic life. I plan to highlight those moments from the different episodes and your voices in the season finale coming in early April. So do head over to mothersquest.com and help me create an amazing season finale. Before I tell you about today's guest, I want to share this week's dedication, which comes from my niece, Nicole Lettery.
I'm Nicole, and I would like to dedicate this week's episode of Mother's Quest to my own mother, Karen Lettery. My mom is the most thoughtful, hardworking, and generous person I have ever met, and I'm beyond lucky to have her as my role model. As a successful businesswoman, my mom has always had a hectic schedule in which she worked long hours and traveled frequently. Despite her workload, I always felt like she put being a mom first. Her passion for her career in fashion, combined with her immeasurable love for her family, inspires me every day. I would not be the independent and driven woman I am if I did not have her as my example. For that reason, and so many more, I'm honored to dedicate this episode to my mom, Karen. I can only hope to be half as good of a mom as her one day.
It's fitting that today's dedication would be in honor of my sister Karen because it's her dear friend Karen Baker who is my guest today. My sister has had a long career in fashion and has been dressing me since I was little. But what was funny that I just had to share is that the day Karen Baker and I sat down to record this interview, we were both wearing my sister's signature Democracy jeans. I will link Democracy in the show notes because honestly, these jeans are epic. Today's guest, Karen Baker, played a pivotal role in connecting me to a career of service. It's not surprising because connecting people to service is Karen's superpower. Karen has been making matches her whole life, but she currently brings this gift to her role as the Chief Service Officer of California Volunteers, where she serves under Governor Brown. Karen has 20 years of innovative leadership in all facets of the service and volunteering sector, including local and national nonprofits and federal agencies. In 2008, she was appointed by former California Governor Schwarzenegger to serve as the first in the nation state cabinet Secretary of Service and Volunteering. Karen is also an amazing mom to two children, Ella and Christopher, both adopted at birth by Karen and her husband. In our conversation, we talk about the ways in which Karen's parents and 7 siblings inspired her to be of service to others, how she brings that service to her work at California Volunteers, and how she's learned to put the needs out there and watch as a community rises up to meet them. Most recently experienced as Karen led efforts to respond to the Oroville Dam disaster. We also talk about her experience parenting children with ADHD and oppositional defiant disorder, how she's using a morning playlist and thoughtful nighttime ritual in between what she calls the madness in the middle to ground herself and her children, and how she's learning to take time and find new ways to invest in herself and her relationships. It was a total joy for me to reconnect with my mentor, Karen, and I left the conversation so appreciative of the work she does in my home state of California, reminded of the importance of using our superpowers to benefit others, and inspired to engage my own children in service. I hope you too find this conversation an inspiration to uncover and channel your family's superpowers to create a service legacy. I'm Julie Neal, and this is Mother's Quest. Karen, welcome to the Mother's Quest podcast, episode number 15. This is such a joy for me to get to talk to you. I'm so excited.
Thank you so much, Julie. I'm thrilled to be here.
So I wanted to start by telling you, you may know this already, but just telling you what an impact you have had on my life. Really, the whole path that I've followed, which has been such an enriching one of doing work in youth development and community building, wouldn't have happened, I don't think, had my older sister, Karen, who's such a good friend of yours, not told me when I graduated from college and I didn't know what to do with my life. She said, you have to go and talk with Karen. And you really helped me that day identify what were the things that most matter to me. And when I thought about those things, whether those were things that I could explore through volunteerism or whether I wanted them to be core to my career and how I spent my days. And, the choice I made was I really wanted it to be central to my career. And you hooked me up with my first and pivotal job in a nonprofit organization, Heart of Los Angeles Youth, where you were a board member. And my 3 years there were so amazing. And the organization is still just does incredible work. And
It's a fabulous one.
Very connected there. But, that whole thing wouldn't have happened without you and your wise counsel.
Oh, I'm so glad.
You.
That was good advice at the right time.
It was.
Good.
So I want to hear a little bit more about your life, and I know that I will gain so much more from this conversation. I'd like to start out with hearing a little bit about your childhood. So if you could tell me
way back.
Let's go way back. Where and how you grew up,
Sure.
And in particular, the role that your own mother had in shaping who you are today.
Oh, that's a joy to talk about. Well, my mom remains a very vibrant presence in my life. She's 89 years old and is in great health and lives here in Sacramento. I was raised one of 8 children in Dayton, Ohio. And then when I was about 15 years old, my dad worked in the retail industry and was offered a job out in Sacramento. So our whole crew moved out to Sacramento, and where I finished up out here. But my mom specifically was just a maverick presence for really interesting reasons. In part, she got married later in life, 27, which at her time was later. Had been a professional in the retail industry and loves retail to this day. Had been a college grad from Ohio State, very proud of that. And then met my father, and they both wanted 8 kids. It was like pretty profound. And then they had 8 children, which is pretty remarkable. All healthy, all doing well. And so that was, she was a very, I would argue, and is a very kind of determined person. She knows what she wants to do and goes for it, whether it's a career, whether it's getting married later in life, whether it's waiting to marry the person that she's really going to feel that super connection to. And she's a lifelong learner. She is, I think that's the biggest impact. I can remember growing up with, it's a very Catholic home, but we would celebrate different religious holidays, for example. Right. Yeah, she was really fascinating. She's like, I think it's really important that we sit down and we understand what different Jewish holidays are, what Muslims experience. Like it was fascinating. And for, and this was in the 60s when people were not necessarily doing that with their parents. And she would always be into different cultures. We would adopt a family from Africa and be sending them donations, and we'd be in a writing and correspondence relationship that would be read at the dinner table. And so I made really into kind of globally connecting with other people and things that people of her generation, which was the greatest generation, just didn't typically do. So she was really innovative and loved learning and inspiring us to connect with people. Very involved in the community, even though she had 8 kids and plenty of excuses probably not to be. She was passionate and is passionate about it to this day.
Amazing. I can definitely see so many of the seeds that she planted in how you have grown into the person you are. What do you think set you on your path to the work that you do?
Well, it was probably a combination of my mom and my dad, because they both were very, very active in the church and in the community. My dad was the chair of the United Way campaign. My mom was on the school board. They were very, very active civically. And so we were kind of raised with this mentality. It was kind of interesting. First of all, we didn't expect our parents to come to our plays or to our sports, because they might only be able to go to one a season.
When you have 8 children.
When you have 8 children. And whenever I remember the one time I kind of was moaning about it to my dad, and he's like, don't you understand? You have all these other brothers and sisters and aunts and uncles to care for you, but the people that we're caring for don't have anyone. Mm-hmm. And always emphasizing with me and with all of us that there's this kind of duty to those people that were not born with the same family kind of riches that our family had. And I don't mean, financial, because we didn't actually have a lot of resources when we were younger. That just wasn't around. And so it was just having family members that would be there for you. And so he would just constantly remind us of that. So would my mom. And then my older brothers and sisters served in what was called the Jesuit Volunteer Corps, the JVC, which is an earlier type of AmeriCorps-like experience. And when you see your older siblings do that, you are instantly curious about, well, is that the path for me as well? Yeah. So that's what kind of got me started in this whole service arena. And then I went and did the Jesuit Volunteer Corps, working with teenage prostitutes in Seattle for my first year out of college.
Wow. I was just going to ask whether you had done that as well.
Yeah.
What do you think was the most compelling thing you learned or impact from that experience?
I think what I really learned is how terrible I was at it. And I say that because what I learned, and it was very humbling, was that as I went about my work with young people who I loved connecting with, I don't know why it hadn't come to me before that moment, but I failed to understand why they didn't have the strength to make different decisions in their lives, why they were repeating decisions of addictions, decisions of crime, other kinds of decisions in their life of unhealthy relationships, and why they didn't have kind of a source of support to go in down a different pathway. And it's that when I realized, wow, the reason I might have that strength is because I've had people in my background always messaging to me, believing in me, reminding me, of course, you can do the right thing. What's the right and the wrong? Let's go to the right, and having that guidance. And so I was very humbled by my inability, frankly, to really influence a lot of the younger people that I would have liked to have influenced. I'm not saying that I didn't have an impact. Hopefully I did. But it was very important to learn that our families and the families that we are, born into or adopted into really have a pretty critical role in shaping just the faith that we have in ourselves.
And so then what did you find was the place where you felt the most power to make a difference?
Well, I think I didn't really, first of all, I realized that I always thought it was going to be one thing, right? That was my assumption, is that you find your calling. And so when it didn't feel like a fit with the youth development arena, or at least with that agency in Seattle, I moved to Portland, Oregon, where I did grassroots organizing, more political organizing. And then I worked in Washington, D.C. for a congressman because I thought, well, change happens there. And then I realized, wow, I'm not motivated by the same thing that a lot of these people in politics seem to be motivated by, which is kind of funny because now I work for the governor. So I'm definitely back in the political field. But at the time, that didn't feel like a fit. And then I just decided, I'll just go back to grad school. And it was at grad school where I was helping people find and figure out what they wanted to do with their lives. I worked in a career office. And it was in that job, and on the side, I started something called Doing Something, which was an effort to get busy professionals involved in volunteer work. And I realized my advocation, doing volunteer and service work, was really what I cared about, and getting other people to do it and inspiring that in others, helping to connect and broker so that someone who has a talent and a gift with, let's say, youth, like Julie, should be actually poised to work in this organization that helps young kids. So it was just recognizing that my superpower was going to be being a matchmaker. And I think what life is about is this interesting journey of figuring out what your superpowers are and then being able to apply them. Because a lot of times people know what they are, but that doesn't mean there's a market you can get into to utilize them. So you have to figure it out, and then you got to be able to apply it. And luckily, some great opportunities came along, some that I created. Then I led Chrysalis, a wonderful homeless agency in LA that helps homeless people get jobs. I did that for 4 years and then ended back with the Bill Clinton administration. And later with Schwarzenegger. I've worked with great people on both sides of the aisle, and always with an eye toward helping to plug people into making a difference in issues primarily around poverty, but also anything that impacts a low-income community.
Wow. Well, this makes such perfect sense now that my sister steered me in your direction, hearing your full history. I don't think I knew at the time.
I don't think you did.
What a perfect match you were for me in trying to help me tap into my superpowers and figure out how I can make a difference.
But I needed you too, right? That's what's so interesting about superpowers, right? I needed people to help find their way, right?
Yes.
So what's great is you helped me too. Don't forget that, right?
Yeah, and you were on the board for Heart of Los Angeles Youth, so part of your role was to bring resources to them.
Absolutely
and you
true.
Did.
Yeah,
I love all the ways in which everybody benefits.
It's true
when there is connection like that happening.
Yeah.
So I want to move into the part of the interview. Well, first I want to update you a little bit about what is going on with me.
Okay, please.
It does sound like, these threads of you being a lifelong learner, of you being on a quest to discover how can you make the biggest difference and to find those places. Those are things that have been very much a part of my experience as well. And in the last, since the spring of last year, I had this epiphany moment where I just felt like I wanted to live what I call my epic life. And not that I wasn't living an amazing life prior to that moment, I have been, but there was something about, having these like whispers of things that I've always wanted to do, or a way that I wanted to kind of step up or play bigger in my life that I had been avoiding. And I just decided the time was now. It was months before a big milestone birthday. And I had, my 2 children, and my youngest was starting to get a little bit more independent and get her ready for preschool. And I just decided it was time. And so for the first time, I've launched a really personal venture, which is called Mother's Quest. And this podcast is part of it. And
so great. It's so great.
So as I'm going down this path to really step into the fullest expression of myself, I also know that I want to learn from others who, are maybe further ahead on the path and have words of wisdom to share. So I identified what I call the guideposts of an epic life. Epic is a acronym mnemonic, and I wanted a chance to ask you about these different guideposts and hear what words of wisdom that you may have to guide me.
Or questions. I still have.
Right. I mean, that's the other thing too, as I've been talking with so many incredible women, there are many ways in which people like you are lighting the way for me, and also many ways in which people have shared the places that still feel hard.
Sure.
And we've begun supporting one another in those areas. So absolutely, definitely want you to own the things you feel like you've sort of figured out along the way, and also the things that still feel challenging.
Ready.
Let's
do it.
So the E in EPIC stands for engaged. And this is the guidepost about being mindfully engaged with your children. So I'd love to hear a little bit about your children and how you engage with them thoughtfully.
Okay. Well, I think this is a really timely topic. I think mindfulness is kind of everywhere around us. People are really trying to get in touch with what does that really mean for themselves, for their families. In my case, I have my husband is Ed, and he's great. And we have two children that we adopted at birth, Ella and Christopher, and two just phenomenal children. My husband and I happen to be white, and they happen to be African American, and both happen to have some interesting special needs that have challenged us, both with ADHD and my daughter also having ODD, oppositional defiance disorder. And so with these different kind of challenges, it's been a whole other way that I've been able to learn and grow. And I think been further, I think you just keep, if you're, I think, learning really profound stuff, you become more and more humble. That's at least my test of if I'm on the right track. And it keeps reminding me of that important lesson of humility. Because the second I think I know what's going on and I've got this nut cracked, the nut cracks me. And so I just think it's been a wild journey. My husband and I adopted later in our lives. My first child at 41, second one at 44, and so I'm 56. So they're 11 and 14, and great kids, great energy. As far as mindfulness, I think it all begins with, in our lives, setting the tone in the morning and looking at, from the morning to the time they go to bed at night, how are you connecting with them in a way that matters? I wake up both of my kids every morning. I go into their bedrooms. I give them a kiss. I'm like, it's a great day. Let's get this going with a really positive message. And that really matters. And then, you got to get the music going. And so you have the boombox and you've got good music going.
What a great strategy.
Which helps them get going, and we noticed a big difference between when we had music and when we didn't. And
I love that.
So that's been great. So it's kind of like instant dance party.
What's on your playlist?
To get them up. We've got everything from Drake to, Madonna to, pretty much everything that you can imagine. But Maroon 5.
Love it.
It's the classic 14-year-old selections, I think, but with a little bit of mom in there.
Yeah.
So it's been that's kind of to get us going in the morning. Sometimes mornings are rough, though. They're just not moving, and then it's a question of just being able to listen, right, and find out what's going on, and just reminding them we're going to get over this. And I think that's the thing, is just being able to constantly be in a positive place has been the biggest thing that I believe helps us stay in this zone where it works, but it can be hard because there's also a recognition that we certainly share with our children, that there are days that are just bad. Once in a while have bad days, and it's okay to have bad days, because now that day is over. So you're kind of scheduled for a good day. And just reminding them of that, I think, helps a lot too.
Yeah.
And then I put my kids to bed every night. They love their back scratched, and we always say a little prayer or positive thought. Tell me one thing that you thought you learned today, or tell me one thing that went well today. So you're ending on a good note and a positive note, regardless of how challenging it was. So that's what I try to do to bookend it. And then there's all the madness in the middle. But
I love that. The thoughtful, mindful bookends and the madness in the middle.
That's what it's like in our house.
Yes. Oh, I can really relate. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I'm definitely getting some new ideas. I love the idea of the playlist.
Yeah.
And bedtime in our house is also a thoughtful time. But I love making sure to always end with a thoughtful question.
Yeah.
Or a positive thought. Well, I want to move to the next guidepost,
sure.
Which is P, which stands for passionate and purposeful. And this is really about the impact that you're making beyond your family. Share a little bit about the way in which you're making an impact these days, and what really helps you feel that you are living your epic life through your contribution.
Well, for me, the part of living an epic life is truly living a life in service, because I think it's when you serve others that you, first of all, are utilizing your superpowers, and you're giving energy, but then you get this great return of energy from people that realize that they've been loved and cared about, and that they matter. And that's that energy that I feel. In my professional role, I'm the Chief Service Officer for the state of California for Governor Brown. And what that means is that many of your listeners may be familiar with AmeriCorps, which is like a domestic Peace Corps program. So we have about 4,000 slots of AmeriCorps members that we distribute to different nonprofits and causes. So whether it's, City Year in Los Angeles, or a San Francisco Justice Corps, there's all kinds of different issues where we're providing the resources of people who work full-time or part-time for a year. And that resource goes out into the community, and then that individual in turn recruits about 10 at least other volunteers as part of the model that we operate from. So what you've got is this great kind of highly leveraged, it's a federal resource that comes into the state that we then distribute. So we're distributing about $40 million worth of resources that are matched by another $40 million in both private and in-kind donations at the community level. So that's kind of what my job is to work with our team here at California Volunteers and our great commissioners and find, what are the right, if you will, nonprofits that we can invest people power into to make a difference. And then to always have my eye on the horizon for new and emerging needs. The latest probably is working with CDCR, the California Department of Corrections, where we are recognizing in our rehabilitation programs that they really need a lot more volunteers in our prison system. And when they get them, the ability to truly transform lives so that when people return from prison into our society, they actually have the soft skills they need, they have purpose, They've been involved in great life-giving programs, life skill programs. They can operate right and well as really making a difference. And so we're in the middle of trying to sort of how can we kind of inject some of the volunteer and AmeriCorps resources into that priority area. But it's everything from that to disaster relief, as we've recently seen with the Oroville Dam threat. We were involved with putting AmeriCorps members who work with the American Red Cross, as well as our colleagues at AmeriCorps and National Civilian Community Corps, at work in the shelters and just helping with all of that. So we've been exceedingly busy, on the professional end, because there's an endless number of social needs in our community. Yeah.
So amazing, the breadth of impact that you have. If you kind of close your eyes for a moment and bring up a snapshot of a particular moment recently in your work where you felt like, oh my God, I am really bringing my superpower. This is my calling. What moment comes to mind for you?
It was probably literally about a Sunday, not last Sunday, but the Sunday before, when the Oroville Dam, when they were really worried and had to evacuate 200,000 people. And I was called to the State Operations Center into what's called the Shelter Task Force, which is a team room with the American Red Cross and other great public servants and the team at the Office of Emergency Services. And we were trying to literally figure out around a table, where are we going to put 200,000 people? And we have to do it, in the next, 4 to 5 hours. And your ability to solve problems, that's frankly as complicated as what am I making for dinner? You see what's in your cupboard, right? In our case, we see, where are there, fairgrounds that might be able to house a lot of people? Where is there warehouses that have this kind of capacity, or churches or temples? So it's just a matter of, not letting yourself being overcome by the fear of, oh my gosh, all these people might be at risk, and really focusing on solutions and positive end of things, and working with great partners in the community that will always come through, and having that faith that people want to do good. They just need to be led to know what is the good, and so that's often what we're in the position to do, is to go ask for those additional resources so that we can get the cots that we need, or the partnerships that will help provide what we need.
Amazing. And so this is something I struggle with, moving away from fear, having more faith, and being a little bit quicker to make decisions, not getting lost in the analysis. Any other words of wisdom from your experience that would help me with that?
I always try to, I'm not always successful at this. I always think that the worst life is one that's full of regret, right? I think of nothing sadder than a regretful life where you don't go for it, where you don't have your voice be heard, where you don't put out there what's needed. And so for me, anytime there's a need, I am providing an opportunity for someone to have this kind of epic moment of giving, So to me, as long as I can be a voice for that to me is the greatest joy, and that's what gives me the courage. I'm like, oh my God, the fact that I know about a need, even if I don't know the solution, if I can just put the need out there,
right,
that will attract the person who has that to give. And if you have that faith that, of course, we can get this done, of course, this is a generous community, the community will respond. I mean, Darrell Steinberg, the mayor of Sacramento, was immediately on the phone with me saying, what can the city of Sacramento do? Well, we'll take everybody. I mean, he was amazing, All these leaders are standing up, and whether they're from a faith community, whether they're from a nonprofit, a private company, I just get the joy of seeing it from all walks. And it's never a lack of resources. It's just a lack of the courage to ask for what you need.
So powerful. One of the things I love about these conversations is that I start to see themes that come up.
Yeah.
And they're always around something I really need to learn. And last week I just interviewed Amanda Steinberg, who's the CEO of the Daily Worth. And she's all about helping women change their relationship with money. And I was telling her how I've been having a hard time investing and in this new venture and in myself in this way, and it feels hard. And she said, a very similar thing. So this is how I know that I have to really pay attention because messages are coming in many.
That is so funny. Yeah.
Multiple people around, sometimes the risk of not making that investment or not moving into action or your epic life, that risk is so much bigger than the risk to, stay safe.
One simple tip I'd offer you and all of your listeners that I learned when I was running Chrysalis which turned out to be insanely powerful. So I had a whiteboard up on the wall where I would just list everything I needed. And one of the things I would list was I needed the entire building renovated, right? This is a multi-million-dollar need. I didn't have the money, but we had clients that needed services. I didn't know how this was going to happen. And sure enough, a man walked into the office who only had 6 months to live. He was dying of AIDS, and he had been a very successful interior designer. And what he ended up doing is he turns to me and he says, my whole life has been very self-oriented. And I'm letting you know I'm going to be dying in 6 months. I want to set this straight. And so what I would like to do is bring in all my vendors. We're going to renovate this place, and it's going to look amazing. And the fact that wouldn't have happened if I didn't at least have the courage, and it doesn't take a lot of courage to write it on a whiteboard, but it's the baby step, right? To just say, this is what I need. So whether you're an organization, whether you're a business, whether it's just you as a mom, trying to get through the day, you got to write down what you need because it just starts the process and it starts attracting into your life. I think the people that are going to be looking for those opportunities.
You were way ahead of your time, Karen, with the law of attraction principles.
Not
sure
very
how much
Oprah.
You follow that. This is amazing. And I another favorite podcast of mine is it's called Being Boss. And the hosts of that show talk about what they call the chalkboard method, which is very similar.
Same idea.
Where they're just, you're putting your goals, you're putting your, your wishes and what you want to achieve, in black and white where you can see it and where you can begin to fill in those blanks as you find those things that you're searching for.
Exactly right.
So great. So I want to move to the next guidepost. So the I in EPIC stands for invested in yourself. And this is really, the ways in which you are caring for yourself and your health, but also your own continued growth and learning. What would you say is the way that you approach investing in yourself?
Well, I think I stink at this. I've got little snippets that I'm starting to tackle with this. When you're raised by a mother who has 8 children and you only have 2, and you feel overwhelmed, you're constantly probably kind of comparing yourself, saying, how dare I think that the work is done when I know my mom, worked from early morning till when she dropped at night, which is what I do. I tend to do it more in an office whereas she was at home with 8 children. But that's part of, I think, the thing you have to kind of first get your head around. Do you really believe you deserve to be supported and invest in yourself? So for me, there was a little bit of probably Catholic guilt. No, others first, which is where I tend to go. And I think we live in this time when we're over giving to our children even when they're high need kids. I know I am so guilty of this, way over giving, and not figuring small little ways that I could make time for self-care, whether it's, a 15-minute conversation with my husband when he gets home, that we sit down and just connect. My mom and dad used to do that. My dad would come home at 6:00 every night, and all the kids were told they could sit in the living room with mom and dad, but they were going to have a glass of wine or, a bourbon or whatever, and they'll have their one little drink, and they'd have their one drink, and they'd talk about the day. And this is before they sat down to dinner. And it taught me a lot about how my mother got to not only catch my dad up, but there was some self-care. There was some adult time that she desperately needed and got from that moment with my father. Right.
Yes.
And then she was someone who would love to go to the hair salon and get her hair done, and still does to this day. I'm not so much a hair salon girl, but I think I have found other ways where I just need to go on a walk with a friend. I walk with a couple friends, a couple days a week, and just to get out in the morning. And it's not, I wouldn't call it a workout. That's a little overstatement, but at least it's just,
body.
Yeah. Eventually I would love the workout, but at least it's, spending time with a girlfriend. And that took me until just about 2 years ago, before I even thought I had to figure that out for myself, so, and I think I need to do more, I'm just starting to slowly give myself more and more permission to do that.
What was the shift for you that helped you start to be more, you mentioned believe that this is something that you deserve?
I think it was a complete and total breakdown. I think it's when you go, oh my God, these children aren't going to give it to me, right? Because they just have almost this endless need, like children just do, especially at the ages that they are. It's a kind of a narcissistic age, right? and so it's and they're trying to figure out life, right? And it's just nonstop. So if you're willing to give, they'll just keep taking and taking. And I all of a sudden realized literally the only one who can stop this pattern of and refuel me is me. And so, wow, what fuels me? And guess what? The answer is not more time with my children. It's actually, a walk with my friend at 6 a.m., because I could still be the one that wakes up my kids, and gets them ready in the morning. But I'm going to take some time for me then, or it's going to be reading this book at night, because I'm going to do that. I'm going to get a little juice going inside instead of, being drained.
Well, I'm so glad that you've started to move in this direction, because you do give so much clearly to your children, but also, as a resident of California, I'm so grateful for the leadership that you play.
You're sweet. Thank you. I love it. I love it. I feel very, very lucky to be in this position.
So we need you to be
fueled.
Healthy and fueled. I would love to support you in any way I can to help you continue to make that a priority.
It's getting there. It's getting there more and more every day.
You started to move into the C in E.P.I.C, which is connected to a strong support network. And the idea there is that so you are not, that you're in community on the journey. You're not alone. You don't feel like you have to hold it all by yourself. What are some of the biggest lessons you've learned around that?
Wow. I think aside from my husband, who's been phenomenal, and my parents, who are amazing because they're both very much there for me, I think I've gone pretty solo. Especially when you have kids that have different challenges, especially problems with social navigation. If you ever have any issues with, being completely and totally embarrassed about your child, acting out in a way that is very hard to explain to other people, or that where they feel overwhelmed by, your child. I just remember at church, leaving one day and having my daughter, who was probably 7 or 8 at the time, seeing a schoolmate and just running at him full speed. He literally fell back. And it's just because she was excited to see him, and she didn't have impulse control or good social navigation skills, and just was overwhelmingly excited to see him. His parents didn't know how to respond. We were embarrassed in trying to manage both the apology, the kind of the social pressure to say something appropriately to Ella, but Ella wasn't at a place where she understood what she had done was a little over the top. So what you end up doing after you have a number of these kinds of social situations is you end up pulling back. You stop connecting. Yeah. At least for me, that's what happened, because I just didn't want to manage the situations. And with the exception of a few very close friends who were always incredible and had no judgment about my kids and were amazing. And of course, my husband, who's incredible, that worked, but a lot didn't work in the way of support. And I realized, with that, I realized part of it was I still had some pride issues I had to work through. So guess what? That comes up for us. And I got to work through all that. And so that's where I go, thank you very much, Ella, because I apparently were brought into my life to have me work through.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I see it always as that. It's this mutual, like, you're the perfect child for me and I'm the perfect mom for you, because not that we're perfect, it's that we're perfectly imperfect. Right. And we're supposed to be helping each other with our journey, So I think that's been a tough thing for me. We're trying to connect more now, whether it's by taking classes, the Mind Institute, which offers great classes with parents that have children with ADHD, or whether it's with our neighbors. If we find one person we connect with really well, we often find they have a network of people that are often really great, less judgmental people. And that's what we need in order to have kind of a safe, good group of folks to hang out with.
Sounds like you're really, that is part of your quest, is how to push yourself to connect, and that you're finding some new ways to do that.
Yeah, but it's been hard. Really, that's probably the hardest thing, especially because I'm like massively social. And that social stuff has always been super easy for me, So for me, it's been fun, easy, and then all of a sudden to have that not work, it's kind of like being an Olympic athlete, and then you have a terrible accident and you can't use your legs, right? That's what it feels like, and you have to find a different way to compete. Using that analogy, in this case, I needed to find a different way to figure out who and how to socialize,
Wow, this is really powerful. Definitely makes a lot of sense and resonates for me.
Yeah.
And absolutely the thing about, whatever it is we need to learn, children bring to us. If
they do, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're getting towards the end of our interview, and every episode ends with a chance to do some mutual acknowledgments for one another, for me to share what some of my takeaways are, and for you to also identify anything that has been clarified for you in how you're living your life from this conversation. But before we do that, the other thing that happens with every guest is that you can give me a challenge or an offering that you think will help me on my quest. What would that be?
Well, I think one of the things that I've learned, not only through my own life, but actually especially with my daughter, with the different challenges she's had, is how service is a phenomenal way to kind of work through and have someone realize their gifts. And often when people are talking about kids with special needs, they think, oh, what can they do as volunteers because of all their different challenges? And I know my daughter's worked with like a cat sanctuary. She's done a variety of different kinds of volunteer opportunities and currently TAs in the kindergarten class, and anything that gets her in a position where she's actually giving and being a servant leader, if you will, is so important to both her own confidence and a more complete picture of who she's able to become in her life, which is not just someone who receives services, therapy, mothering, nurturing, but she's supposed to be a giver, right? And we don't often, I think, have that expectation of our children if they have special needs. So I would encourage you, if you're not already doing it with your children, is to make sure you find something that they can be giving to.
So the crazy thing is I'm a step ahead of you in this challenge, which I'm finding
awesome.
Amazing. Wow. So my son Ryan, my older son, he's having bar mitzvah in April, and I really wanted him, as part of the experience of moving into becoming a Jewish adult, to have a meaningful service project. And I've been open on some of the episodes about some of his social challenges and developmental delays as he was growing up. And just last week, we met with somebody who was instrumental in helping him. And he's going to now go and help her with some of the younger children that she's working with. He's going to be an expert player and support them. So I love. It's clear I'm on the right track.
You totally are.
That is really an important value, and that I've been noticing has been missing. So I will keep on that path and share with you, what he and I both learned from that.
Oh, that is just perfect. I love bar mitzvahs and bat mitzvahs because they just kind of lay it out for people. Like, this is part of what your adulthood is supposed to be. You're supposed to define kind of your service legacy, right? Mm. And I think that faith tradition definitely captures it. But I don't know if all the other faith traditions really line it up that way. I mean, they do it differently, but I wish it was more intentional, And I think that's just a gorgeous tradition to really be mindful about selecting that.
Well, it sounds like, moving into our final acknowledgments then, I want to just say that it does really sound like in your upbringing, in the way that your mother honored looking at other religions and how you and your siblings, did the Jesuit service project, that legacy of service is something that started with you young, and clearly you have continued, and it's inspiring to me. And so I really take with me the reminder and the lesson of the power of service, and also how it's such a reciprocal relationship in which both parties learn and grow. And I also definitely take away this idea of having faith, that if you put out the things that you need,
it's coming right at you.
Them.
Yeah. It's just, it's like a magnet. I've seen it way too many times. I'm also really good at matchmaking people. I found because it's the same quality.
And the reminder, I appreciate the reminder of, for you, it's matchmaking. And actually, that's one of my powers too.
Isn't it?
Really paying attention to and nurturing and using, my superpowers.
It is.
As I continue on this path. So thank you, Karen. Such a gift to have this time with you.
Oh,
what are your biggest takeaways?
Well, first of all, I just love that you're doing this. I mean, and that you're going for it. And I love the acronym with the EPIC. I think that just captures it like perfectly. Everything that we're supposed to kind of both line up, struggle with, figure out, right? So I think it's just holistically, it just captures it. Just because I have found some of those that I have down, passion and purpose has come really pretty easily to me. That I and that C, I struggle, So,
that's your learning curve.
Those are my learning
curves,
right? Oh my God. So I'm just grateful for that to be kind of packaged for me, kind of in this way that is easy for me to remember. I almost feel like I want to put like kid blocks on my table with an E.P.I.C so that it's like constantly in front of me. Like,
I love that.
Am I being reminded of it all the time? Because that's where we need our own mindfulness about that. Well, thank you.
You're so welcome. And I will send you, I created for myself, but it's an offering to others. I call it Epic Life Planning and Reflection Sheets. It's just,
that would be great.
2 pages. And it helps you at the start of each week identify what your intentions are along those guideposts and some inspired action steps you want to take. And then, on the other side, it's end of the day reflections. So you can identify, what was something positive that happened today? Where was a place where I found some magic in something that was hard? And it's been really helping me. So I will send you the link.
Please send that to me.
It'll be linked into show notes for others that want to use it.
That'd be great.
And I look forward to staying connected with you and sharing what I'm learning along the way and hearing, the things that you continue to do in the world and also the places where you're strengthening your epic life.
Well, thanks for this great opportunity. You're an incredibly special woman.
Well, thank you, Karen. Have a great day.
Thank you so much for coming along with me on this episode of the Mother's Quest podcast. I hope this conversation sparked something that will help you live your epic life. If you'd like to get show notes and learn more about how to join the Mother's Quest community, head over to mothersquest.com. And while you're there, I would love it if you would follow the prompts to subscribe, leave a review on iTunes, and help us spread the word. I want to end with some words to light the way on your quest. Seize the day, love your people, honor your gifts. Until next time.